you need to run it like a business because it is a business. Then you hire a manager as the CEO of your business because they're the ones that are running the overall business. I had an artist once say to me, "Oh, I always saw you as a father figure." And I'm like, "I'm not your father.
You're like, oh no,
I'm your
please.
manager." Right? It is a real gift to be able to make a living from your imagination,
Oh, I love that. That's true.
right?
Hello and welcome to the Noisemakers. I'm your host, Liv Carter. Today with me is Jake Gold. He is one of Canada's most successful artist managers, founded his company, the Management Trust, in 1981, so has seen it all. Managed a Tragically Hip for almost 20 years, has multiple Manager of the Year awards from the Canadian Music Industry Awards, and was a judge on Canadian Idol for all 6 years of its run, which, if there's time, I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. Hey,
Sure.
Jake, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Liv.
Did I get any of that wrong? Just let's
Um,
start there.
uh, a little bit. I started managing the Tragically Hip with my partner Alan in 1986. So I managed them for 17 years
Mhm.
till 2003, and then we had a break. We split, and then in 2020, so 17 years later, I started managing them again. So now we're 5 years into the second round of managing them. So I guess combined, you could say I've managed them for 22 years, but there was a
Right, right,
break
right.
in there. But I did start with them way back at the beginning. So,
I think about 2 years ago, you and I had a conversation at a conference that stuck with me.
mhm.
And it started from the concept of a band as a business. What are kind of your initial thoughts on kind of that idea of a band as a business?
Well, when you think about it, when a band starts out, or an individual artist for that matter, they're creating songs. Songs are intellectual property. They want to go out and try and monetize that intellectual property, whether it's t-shirts with their name or selling the songs or
Mhm.
putting it up on a streaming service is a version of selling the song, whatever it is, to try and generate revenue from that intellectual property. All of that is business.
Right.
That's the business side of creating the art in the first place. And so, one of the things I always encourage with artists is that you need to run it like a business because it is a business. What you do when you're creating the art is you're creating the art, but it's no different than, someone who paints a painting and then puts it in the gallery to sell it. It's the same
Yep.
thing. I think that, when it comes to a business, uh, a band is a business, an artist is a business, and they hire people to work for them the same way a business hires people to work for them. So you hire an accountant to keep, or a business manager to keep track of your money, no different than a business has a CFO. You hire a tour manager, which is no different than, any other business having people out there on the road selling your
Mhm.
wares. Um, and then you hire a manager as the CEO of your business because they're the ones that are running the overall business and you are the board of directors. And it's one of the
Yeah.
things I always explain to the acts that, you hired me as your CEO to run your business. You create the art, I'll run the business, you're the board of directors. So, like any CEO, reports to the board. And I think
Right.
when you break it down that way to an act, I think at that point they start to realize how things are defined. Because too often, a, because management is referred to as personal management, too often the boundaries are very gray
Mm.
because how
Yeah.
close you are with the artist, you know. I had an artist once say to me, "Oh, I always saw you as a father figure," and I'm like, "I'm not your father.
You're like, oh no,
I'm your
please.
manager." Right? And I understand. Listen, I understand the emotional attachment, and I
Yeah.
understand that it can get emotional because it is personal. And I think great
Mhm.
managers do treat it personally. But you also have to remind yourself all the time that this is a business and your job is to generate revenue, for the business and to make sure it's run properly. And in keeping with the artist's integrity and the artist's philosophy. And if an artist, there are some artists that say, I don't give a shit, I'll do any kind of placement with my song. I don't care if it's an oil company or whatever, and they're that. I don't want to do that kind of thing. So you have to work within the artist's philosophy.
The framing, and that's the thing that stuck with me so much. The framing of the manager as the CEO and the band as the board, because they got, like most people, I've worked at private companies and public company,
Mhm.
and the relationship between a CEO and a board is exactly the second you said that, I was like, yes, never heard it said more clearly. It's such a it's such a great framing of the boundary and the roles and responsibilities.
Well,
Um,
I have a meeting every 2, 3 weeks with the guys in the Tragically Hip,
mhm,
and when the memo goes out for the next meeting with the link for the Zoom, because they live in different places, it's
right.
referred to as the board of directors meeting.
I love that. It's like,
Yeah.
let's have a board meeting. That does, when did that show up though? That's what I'm curious about is because you said, the company started in 1981. You started managing the HIP in 86. Did you come in with that idea,
No,
that framing, or
no,
how
no,
did that
no,
develop for you?
no. When I came back into the fold in June of 2020, um, because the band wasn't touring anymore because the singer had passed away.
Right.
um, I thought it was important that if we were going to start to get stuff done, we had to start getting serious about how we were going to um, move things along. And so I was the one that came up with this, calling it that, because
Yeah.
I don't think they'd ever thought of it that way. And by doing that, I think everyone started to take it more serious just by
Yeah.
saying it's a board of directors meeting, right? Because
Yeah. By just
in
by naming it, you created that
right,
energy.
that energy,
Yeah.
and then everyone started to take things more serious.
Yeah.
Um, and understanding that everybody, and then there would be minutes from the meetings, and the minutes would go out
Mhm.
the next day. My right hand person Ryan, who I think you met him in Aspen too.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
He takes the minutes. They would go out. He would send them to me the next day. I'd make sure they were right, and they'd go back out to the band with actions on who
Yeah.
was supposed to do what and who was responsible for what, and then
This is
we
so
review
good.
them at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What was
Like you said you were going to do this. Did you do that? Yeah.
following up on that, following up, yeah.
That is
And
fantastic.
so now there's a record of all our meetings.
Right.
And if you know anything about businesses, and I don't know about in the US, but in Canada, you're supposed to keep a minute book for a corporation.
Hmm.
You're supposed to keep a minute book. Well, we have minutes
Right.
for the last 5 years, you
That's
know?
so cool. So how did it then contrast it, compare and contrast for me, right? Your first stint with the band from starting to, worldwide fame. How did you manage that then if you didn't yet have that framing? Because none of this is an accident, right? Everything is intentional. You
Yeah.
don't get to that level without being intentional.
Well, I don't think I probably understood the idea of business in that way. I was, mid 20s. I was 27, I
Mhm.
think, when we signed them. Um, and I never had an experience with public companies. I finished high
Right.
school. I didn't go to university or anything. Like I just, learned the job on the job.
Right.
Um, so then it was, and because there was no Zoom, so you couldn't just have a meeting. And when they're on the road that much, so
Right.
you would have meetings, every so often, and then you would go out and do your things. As I became better and smarter at the business side of things and understanding it, I think I was able to define it more. And the same with them. They
Right.
were young guys driving around
Yeah.
in a van, right? Next thing you know,
Yeah.
it's they have families and they have kids and they had to start treating it, and they got taxes and they're building, we're devising corporations and the way their whole setup is. So when you start to um, build that out, everybody starts to take it more serious because now you're talking about a lot of money. So
Yeah. And the
um,
stakes are high. They're employing people by that point. There's
yeah,
other people whose paychecks depend on them playing
right.
shows.
So yeah, so I think, but and in fact that was probably, it's covered in we did a documentary that came out in September called No Dress
Uh-huh.
Rehearsal. It's on, I'll plug it. It's on Prime around the world, Amazon Prime. Um, but it's kind of covered in the doc how there was not a lot of communication because
Mhm.
things were just moving along and no one really wanted to say anything, and things fall apart and even amongst themselves. So I
Yeah.
think that was one of the things that I recognized from back then. So when I came back in, it was one of the things I said to them is like, look, like we can't do what we did before. We
Hmm.
need to communicate, and we need to communicate in the room, because so often you would have a meeting and then afterwards you would get five different phone calls from five different guys talking about what they really wanted to say. And that happens, by the way, with every fucking band I've
Right.
ever worked with,
Yeah.
right? It happens in business meetings.
I
You
was just
sit
gonna
there,
say
nobody
it
wants to say
happens
a
at work.
word,
Yeah.
and then after the meeting everybody chimes in with what they really want to say, and it's like, so I said we can't do that, you know like
Yeah.
that's what these meetings are for. These meetings are for that, so we don't have to have
Yeah.
the multiple conversations pre and post. It's been really healthy.
It sounds really healthy because
Yeah,
I was gonna say a board member of a place I used to work called that the meeting after the meeting.
right.
And he's like, that's where the real decisions are made, but that's bad. Like he said it like, oh, it's kind of a cute thing, but he's like, no, no, it's actually really bad. Like you really want to train everybody to go and get agreement of everything is discussed in the room. The
Yeah.
decisions are made in the room. Did everybody just kind of like, yeah, that sounds good? Or did you have to persuade anybody of
No,
working that way?
no, no. I think everyone realize that that's the only way to move forward,
Yeah.
plus they had been grieving because of Gord's passing, and
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think they had communicated to each other that much. And I think that's what kind of also, these meetings were bringing everybody back together,
Yeah.
right? Then been in the same room with each other for years. So
Yeah.
So, and not because they didn't like each other, it's just because there was no reason to be,
Right.
So
And they had other projects and their
yeah,
lives and yeah.
yeah. But what's really interesting and is, if it wasn't for COVID, we probably wouldn't have been able
Oh, interesting.
to do it, right? Because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they live in different places. So historically it would be like, oh, who wants to drive to Kingston where some of the guys live?
Mhm.
And then it would be,
Yeah.
no, you guys should drive to Toronto. And then trying to set up everyone's schedule to have these meetings. Well, here we were locked in. It was June of 2020 when we started back, locked
Mhm.
in the home. Nobody was leaving. We had this platform called Zoom that everyone was using,
Yep.
to communicate. And next thing you know, we're able to have, 2-hour meetings every 2 weeks because no one had any other thing to fucking do. Like we were all just sitting,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? Like almost everybody was sitting around. Like that's what they were doing. They were doing nothing, right?
Right.
Like and
Yeah.
so this was like, oh, cool. I have this opportunity to talk to my best friends that I've known since high school for a
Yep.
couple of hours. And in the meetings, it wasn't just always business. It was like people would talk about what they just did. Like, oh, did you see so and so? Oh, I forgot to tell you, so and so said hello. And, it was like everybody was like back yakking again.
Exactly. It's like, okay, everything was bad, but this good thing came out of it. Kind of want
Yeah,
to transfer this to newer artists because when I think about like some of the younger talent you're working with now, same as with a company, what you need to do as a public company, you shouldn't be doing when you're a brand new startup because you're going to slow business down, right? You have
right.
different needs. But what would your view be on newer artists? How can they think about that concept of the band as a business, the framing you have, to start putting things in place from the start, maybe with a bit more flexibility because they might need it, but how can they
Well,
think
r-
about
r-
getting ready for that later down the line?
just remember, Liv, not every corporation is a public company, right?
True. Right.
So none of these are public companies. So we can be as nimble as we want,
Mhm.
right? No, whether it's a big act or a small act, we can still be really nimble because we're not reporting to shareholders and we don't have filings and all that other stuff. So
Yeah, yeah.
we can be nimble. So being nimble, I think, is really key. But even with an individual artist, like one of the first things we would do is put together a cash flow projection. Like, what a concept. Hey,
Oh,
you
smart.
got bills, you're gonna have bills to pay, right? How much do
Yeah.
you need per month to keep your thing going, right? If you don't want to take a job, if you just want to do this full
Right. If you
time
want to focus on music. Yeah.
and just focus on music, okay, what do you need to pay your bills? Okay, so we know how much money you need a month. Okay, where can we bring money in to help with those bills? Right? And you do a cash flow projection, and maybe there's a loss in the first year. Okay, where do we find the money to cover that loss? Right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's as simple as, you're 20 years old, you're 21 years old, live with your parents for now.
Yes. Yes.
Keep your
Yeah.
costs down, right? Like always keep your costs down. Make sure you have zero overhead when you're first starting out. When I first started with the guys in the hip, they were 18 to 22 years old. Like that was the age span. Like they all lived with their
So young.
folks, right? They all live with their
Yeah.
folks. They're all like, we got them a van and that was their home, you know?
Mhm.
So I think that's one of the really important things. And I think that's why it's, for me anyways, it's so hard to manage someone later in years. And it's not an ageist thing, it's just a reality thing. I have artists that are really, really good that come to me at like, 38, 39 years old, and they're trying to do something. And I'm like, this is really hard to do at
Mhm.
your age because especially if they're not like in the pop genre or for that matter in the commercial country genre, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um like if they can't afford to go out and play and build an audience, yes, you can build an audience with other ways, but you still need to be out there. um
100%. Yeah.
if you can't afford to do that because you got a wife and kids and you got a job, then it's really plan B, your music career. It's not plan A,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it can't
And
be. Yeah.
right. So it's really hard to work with artists like that, right? That aren't, it's one thing if they're already established. Like I work with the Pursuit of Happiness. They're older, they've been around for a long time, they all
Yep.
have other jobs, but they can get together and record, every so often. They can get together and they play shows. They have like 6 big festivals this summer in Canada. So they
Nice.
can do that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, and because of that, um, uh, it's not necessarily a plan B. It's just the other thing they do. But if they had to start, in their 40s or late 30s to try and do this from the beginning, it would be almost impossible.
Yeah, I was thinking like the only example in recent years that I can think of is Jelly Roll, of somebody
Right.
who came in later, but then he also came in being such a unique individual
Well, and
that I
also
think that also is like part of what made it possible for him.
also playing in the pop side of things. Like
Yeah,
he plays
true.
in the pop world, right?
Yeah.
And almost crosses over country, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
like country is the one place where I think, but especially if you're doing sort of commercial country, right?
Hmm.
Um, you look at someone like Noah Kahan, like he started when he was really young, slugging it out, and then he finally got a hit, via TikTok. But he had a base already
Right.
at 22. He had already been touring a lot, and I think that all that did was expand it. You know, he has a hit on TikTok, but if he didn't have
Yeah.
that base, he wouldn't still be around because
Right. It would fizzle out.
it may have been a
Yeah.
one and done, right? But what happened is he's legit. Like people see him and they go, "Oh, this is legit."
And when you were thinking, we're talking about Pursuit and going, they have lives. This isn't the only thing that's going on for them. And that to me sounds incredibly healthy as well, just mentally healthy of I'm not staking everything on this thing. I have other sources of income. I have other ways to support my family. It is not all this one thing. Because then I think that it's going to be very tempting as soon as it's, a little bit less successful, panic.
But I will say to you that most acts, when they start out, their goal is to do only that,
Right, of course. That's
right?
fine.
And then the other stuff ends up being the stuff they do for fun on the side. Like Robbie from
Yeah.
the Tragically Hip paints, and he's a really good painter, but he won't sell his work.
Because
He
it's
literally,
like his,
yeah, he
it,
just paints.
yeah.
Maybe he'll paint a picture of one of the. It's in the doc where he paints a picture of one of the other guys to give to
Mhm.
him for his birthday, right? But he doesn't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
sell his work. He's painting for the exercise of painting, the same way people knit, like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean? It's another artistic expression. He doesn't need to sell it, um, because he's doing it as artistic expression, right?
Yeah.
So some people want to, like Mo Berg from The Pursuit, DJs at clubs playing like 80s music, and he does it because he loves playing DJing and playing
Yeah,
80s
yeah. He
music.
just
He
wants
doesn't
to.
do it. Yeah, so that's kind of his passion, to do that, expose people to cool music and stuff. So
Yeah.
he's not doing it for money, right?
Well, I guess
So
that's the ideal, right? If you can do the thing you would do for free,
right.
but still make money off it, I think that's the ideal. So
Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I always say that it is a real gift to be able to make a living from your imagination,
Oh, I love that. That's true.
right? And I think
Yeah.
that's what artists strive
Yeah.
to be able to and that's why I one of the reasons why I do what I do is I love nothing more than someone who can think of something and then put it out,
Hmm.
and I try to do in my world the same thing on the business side, whether it's a marketing idea or a t-shirt idea or strategic ideas. For me, it's always about the idea of thinking of something and then
Yeah.
executing it. I play tennis, and I watch a lot of tennis as well. and I was listening. I was watching a match once, and John McEnroe was commentating,
Mhm.
and you know, you see lots of great shots, and people look at that shot, but all of this kind of stuff. And
Yeah, yeah.
John said something once, and that's where it sort of really stuck with me. Is he said, you know, how did he think to do that? And it light went off.
Mhm.
It was kind of like, oh, right. You had to think about doing that before you actually did it,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
right? Your mind had to say, go there. And my partner Alan, he used to say the same thing. He was a public opinion pollster. That was his main gig,
Mhm.
you know, for politics and brands and everything else. Very successful. And he would always, because that's one of the things that pollsters look for, is they're trying to find out what people think. That's
Yeah.
right. And when he would see something, he would always say, what would make that person think of that? Like, he would always say to me, like, if someone did something, he goes,
Yeah.
what would make them think of that? So it really taught me to kind of, you know, excuse the pun, think that way.
Mhm.
Think about the audience. Think about um, the artists. Like, think about how people approach things. Is like, you know, what made them think of that. And I don't think enough people kind of look at it that way. Is that they think it's more
Yeah.
instinctive, but it really isn't more instinctive, because everybody has thought.
Right. And that's what I want to dig into a little bit, because as you were talking, I also tennis fan. And when you're watching a Roger Federer, or these days a Yannick Sinner,
Right.
or a Carlos,
Right.
it just looks so effortless. But you know it's not. Intellectually, we know it's not. But it looks like they select their shot, and it
Right.
looks like it just magic or intuition. But underneath that intuition is years and years and years of intentionally thinking about how to get better. So if we put that onto your career, if you think about when you're in your 20s or in your early 30s, you are, as you said, kind of like learning on the job, learning with the band, you're all getting smarter together. At what point did you start to think, I know what I'm doing? I actually really know what I'm doing. And it starts to become easier. And you see oh, we need to do this marketing thing versus this. We need to tour here versus that market. Do you remember, like, at what point you started to really get that level of confidence?
That would be assumed that even today I think I know what I'm doing.
Actually, I do think you do know what you're doing. So,
Yeah, the thing is, you know, as things change, you're always learning. So
yeah.
it's like, you know, when the internet came about in 1994, when everyone started talking about this thing, the internet, right?
Mhm.
It was a new thing. So, you know, we registered the hip.com in 1994. People are like, whoa, that's a long time ago. It's like, yeah, we were on it, you
Yeah.
know, and I embraced that wholeheartedly. So that became a new learning experience. In 1997, we sold CDs directly to fans, which no one had ever done. In fact, Newsweek did a story on us and interviewed me about this idea of
Yeah.
selling music directly to fans on the internet. Now, this wasn't downloads. This was actual
Yeah.
physical
Yeah. The
CD.
physical. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So before the, you know, vinyl coming back. So I think that you know, what you learn is these are just new ways of distribution, and you start to
Mm.
learn how to use them. But it's all just another way to get to the fan, right? So I
Yeah.
was always a big proponent of trying to communicate directly to the fans, um, as many times as you could, where you could actually talk directly. So there
Yeah.
were no gatekeepers. You didn't need radio to communicate to the fans. You didn't need media to communicate to the fans. So
Yep.
if you could communicate directly to the fans, and there were more options to communicate directly to the fans, to me, that was always a good thing. So, we started a mailing list in the early 90s where we literally mailed a newsletter to people. We'd print it and put it in an envelope and put a stamp on it. And then when email came about, we started to build an email list, and then we started to build a
Yeah.
fan club. But it was always with this, oh, the goal was the exact same, just we had different tools now to access
Yeah.
that goal, right? Where we went from direct mail to direct email, and now we're using email and text.
Mhm.
And people have the option to opt in on whichever way they want to be communicated to. And
Yeah.
learning not to abuse the fans, learning that if you're going to have
Mhm.
direct communication, you don't need to send them an email every day. We usually send a newsletter out every couple of weeks, and not every one of them is telling them to buy something. Sometimes it's just content.
Yeah.
Just like, hey, thought you may want to see this cool thing that we found in our archives, or like, look at this ticket stub from back here. Anybody went to that
Mm.
show? Like, just that
Yeah.
kind of communication. And social media is the exact same, is using social media as a way to communicate, right? But those are all learning curves, right? So for me, um, I'm always learning, and I'm always really curious about anytime something new. Like, I get all these different industry newsletters and tech newsletters and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And when I see something interesting, I'll flip it around to different people that I work with and say, hey, check this out. I wonder if this could work for us. And next thing you know, we're doing something different that nobody else has done, because we found something that maybe is interesting. Like, remember listening to Howard Stern on the radio, and forget who it was, a female comedian was on, and she was talking about how she uses this platform called Community to text her fans, and she sells a lot of
Yeah.
tickets off of it. And I went, oh, that's interesting. What's this Community thing? So I started to investigate it. Next thing you know, I'm having a meeting with the guys who run it and talking about setting it up for the Tragically Hip as a
Yeah.
way to communicate with fans. And so that became the platform we use for SMS. So to say, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing to the extent that I know we need to reach fans.
Right.
Now it's a matter of using tried and true tested ways, and also looking for new ways to engage with people, and without taking advantage of them, and respecting
Mhm.
them, because
I
there's,
I
you
think
know,
that's the big thing, right? Is because if every communication is, "Hey, buy this thing," people would start to drop off. Was it at Polestar? I was talking to another artist manager, and social media came up, and that person was like, "Awful, terrible." It changed this relationship between like manager, artist, fan, um, and not for the better. And I'm curious because when I hear you talk, what I'm hearing is a lot of enthusiasm and excitement about not everything's going to work, but you're always willing to try the next thing. So how do you view that?
um, it's another tool.
Hmm.
If you can share interesting content with people, I think it's actually easier for a band, because with a band you can have a third party that speaks for the
Oh, yeah,
band,
yeah,
right? With an individual, it has to be more personal.
yeah,
So it's incumbent upon the artist to do that much more work when they should be writing songs or performing, because now there's this
yeah,
other tool in the toolkit that they have to use, and they have to communicate with the fans, and they have to say things, and it
yeah.
becomes much harder. And um, I think that's where a lot of artist managers may not like the fact that there's so much more work to do. It's harder. There are lots of people that have third party people do it, where they're coming in and they're going to bank 50 pieces of content. They'll shoot a bunch of videos, and we do that with the guys, because we've been doing a lot of with the hip, a lot of tutorials where the guitar players are showing people how to play certain songs on guitar. So
Yeah, yeah.
on the weekend, we just did a whole bunch of them, right? Set it up,
Oh, to
brought
then like put them out over time.
yeah, and just bank them and put them out over time and,
I like
and they
that.
get great
Yeah.
response. They get great response. They get the best response of anything we put up when it's the guys just talking. So,
Yeah.
but it's much harder for an individual, I think, and I think that's where it
Mm.
kind of gets in the way. I think with a band, you can have sort of a singular voice, but it doesn't have to be any one person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some people are really good at it, and some people just aren't good at it. Uh, but I work with young people that I brought in that are really understand it because they understand it because they
They
grew
were
up on it,
they grew up with it.
right?
Exactly.
Like there's their generation only knew screens,
And like putting yourself on like that to
right?
me is still like even this. And I'm like, this is not natural for me. But for them it is. They turn the camera on themselves, do their thing. They're super comfortable.
But it's interesting. Not everybody likes it, and not everybody feels it has to be this way. We were
Hmm.
making a video last year, and we hired this 21-year-old director to make the video, and um, and I was talking to him about it's a campfire type song, and the idea was having people at a cottage with a campfire, which is a very
Yeah.
Canadian thing, but even people in Colorado can relate to that, sitting around a campfire at night and
Absolutely. John
someone
Denver taught us all. Yep.
someone playing acoustic guitar, all of that stuff. It's and um so so we had live footage of the band playing this song. So that's what we were going to
Mhm.
intersperse with the video because obviously we weren't going to have the band do it. There's singers not around, right? So
Right.
we weren't going to shoot new footage of the band. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if the kids had, the footage where they were showing each other on their phones, um, what was on, that footage on their
Yeah,
phones.
yeah.
And he said to me, yeah, we wouldn't do that. I go, what do you mean? He
Yeah.
said, he said, it's not cool when you're hanging out with your buddies to be on your phone and your
Okay.
friends. It's not cool.
True. But I
He
thought
said,
that that's what they all did.
right. That was my assumption, right? All this early tech, we see it as, whoa, I remember the first cell phone, the flip phone and all that. Well, I remember the first cell
Yeah,
phone
yeah,
was a
yeah.
brick and then it was in my car. But, you know, um, so, so I think that, this assumption that every young person or millennial or whatever Gen Z, whatever you want to call them, every Gen Z is only interested in being on their phone and showing off and all this other stuff. There's the cool kids are not that. And if you look at
Yeah,
most trends that happen and continue, it starts with the cool kids.
for sure.
You're too young for this, but in the early Aspen conferences, there was a woman that came. I forget her name, but you could look her up. I wish I remember her name. But she invented the Converse slide. I guess she called herself a futurist. I forget what the term, but she told this whole
Mhm.
story how she used to sit on patios and notice that, tank tops and flip-flops were becoming the cool kid thing. And Converse, they needed to um, uh, uh, how can we sell that back to the public but make it more palatable? When they came up with the slide,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
yeah. So she was like, all about that, right?
One of the things I wrote down as we were chatting before is the phrase seeing the future. And then again, like the story you're telling about this lady reminds me of that. So maybe we can end on this is kind of how trying to find the best way to say this is part of the job is seeing the future. Like, where is the market going? Where is the industry going? But then also having developed that intuition over many years of which threads to follow and which threads to leave alone. How do you view that? The kind of the need to sort of see the trends before they're trends, but then also having the discernment to understand which ones to get in on early and which ones to kind of let that play out a little first.
Listen, there's plenty of times where you can just be too early, right? On things.
Mm.
Like I look back now and on a few things I know we were probably early. But it was okay because it still worked for us.
Yeah.
Um, you know, there wasn't necessarily the big audience for something that there was today. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
um, I think that one of the things I've learned is because I get approached by a lot of new tech all the time. Hey, we
I
think
bet.
you'd be
Yeah.
great for this thing. So now it's like, well, let's see if this thing can actually start to gain an audience and take off, right?
Yeah.
Are other people using it? Is there an example of where it's actually worked? Um,
Yeah.
I talk to other managers all the time about, hey, have you tried this? Do you know about this? And
Mhm.
there's a couple other managers that I know that come from the same sort of philosophical place as me, the direct to fan experience, all of those kinds of things. And we
Yeah.
discuss new new ideas all the time about, hey, have you tried this? Or, sometimes I'll get a call, hey, did you guys end up landing on anything when you're trying to do that? And it's like, well, I had a meeting with this one company. I'm not sure if they're ready yet, but maybe you want to talk to them,
Yeah.
like that kind of thing. So that happens a lot more now. There's a lot more people trying to build tech, and everybody wants to be in the music business. It's like, oh, this would be great for artists. And I've
Yeah.
had plenty of meetings with all kinds of people about that kind of stuff. About, someone's got a new platform. Oh, we're going to do this new platform and you can, pay in crypto and all this. It's like, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm going to stay away from that.
Has AI come up at all in those conversations?
Uh, I haven't been approached yet about doing anything like that. You know, AI is not going to invent a t-shirt. They're not going to print
Right.
my t-shirt. Maybe there'll be software within a system to make the t-shirt or a poster or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
I think from the creative side, I think it's different. Obviously, AI is coming up a lot in terms of intellectual property.
Yep.
And but there are some great programs that have been made, software programs using AI to, like, pull a vocal off a track because you want to use the
Yeah.
vocal. A lot of sync requests come with, can we get the instrumentals of those songs? Well, if they're songs from way back when, we may have not mixed incidentals of those
Mhm.
songs. So there's these programs using AI that allows you to pull the vocal out so you can deliver the instrumentals to people that want to
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
it in
Yeah.
a movie or something like that, right? So there's a lot of benefits to it. It's just, again, it's like everything else. It's like how you use it.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see that in the next couple of years of what are those use cases that are additive while still protecting people's intellectual property, because
Right.
that is a legal issue that has not been resolved at all.
Right.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for your time. I feel like I got a little smarter listening to you. So I really appreciate this.
I think you always get when you I would always say when you teach, you learn. So
That is correct. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jake.
thanks, Liv. Hopefully, I'll see you in December if everything works out.
We're fixing it. We're fixing it.